part 2, you say? Careful what you wish for. Oh. What's the worst place you can think of in any horror setting? Raccoon City? Well, sure, it was pretty much one of those dystopian company towns for the Umbrella Corporation, and of course the fact it was blown to smithereens. Silent Hill? It's a good contender for sure. But no, neither of these quite fit the bill. At least Raccoon City was more or less vaporized, but imagine, if you will, a small Anywhere USA type town where shit just keeps getting worse. You see, in what is now technically part 1 of this little series, I talked about the killer and survivor of all things Wicked quite a bit, but I didn't really get into the big third chunk of that chapter. So before they added the neon streets of Korea in the all-kill comeback chapter, fans of Dead by Daylight clamored for a city map. With all things Wicked, we sort of got that. Or at least a slice of that. Greenville seems to be Dead by Daylight's every town, the sort of default American small town that you'd see all over the place. For lack of a better comparison, Greenville is like Dead by Daylight's equivalent of Springfield. Do with that what you will. From what we know of its in-lore history, it was founded by pilgrims, so it's located somewhere in Massachusetts. This will be important later, just put a pin in that thought, just trust me. The thing is, while this place seems just like any old town that an aspiring emo musician would write a song about, it's gotta be the worst place to live in any horror setting. Greenville looks pretty average, and that's by design, but there's far too much shit going on here, to the point where I must ask, is it even possible to live a full, normal life here? This place has danger relative to Gotham City, all things considered. Let's take a trip through this place to see all the sights. Greenville is built over what's called an overlap, a place in the Dead by Daylight world where the entity's realm kind of seeps through, or is more prone to being in the entity's periphery. This means that a lot of weird shit happens here. In Sable's lore, they refer to it as a fracture, but overlap is the more textbook term across other characters' lore entries. For Greenville specifically, in Tome 24, The Frayed Rope, the Greenville Trio, as I'll be calling them, go to a motel that's reportedly haunted. Now, aside from the fact that Greenville is more than likely legitimately actually haunted, this is yet another example of the entity's realm seeping into reality, as Julian is seemingly attacked by some of the iconic black fog. Now, in a broader sense, people in Greenville just straight up vanish into thin air, and no one can seem to explain it. I mean, we can assume it's the work of the entity, but to the average person living in Greenville, it's just, oh yeah, so-and-so, they just vanished one day.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, but they got him.
What does that mean?
I liked him, too.
Wait, what do you mean they got him?
He used to share his Dunkaroos. Good guy.
We hear of this happening quite a lot. A disappearance during a seance in the 1800s, several college students disappearing after watching a movie in the 1950s. In the 1960s, a group of teenagers disappearing while exploring an abandoned hospital thought to be haunted. Seems a lot of places in Greenville are haunted and abandoned, by the way. As recently as Sable's lore, 2 teenage brothers disappeared in the theater as well, and their sister, who survived the incident, ended up clawing her eyes out. Hell, a lot of these don't even happen in private. Michaela, during a story session in front of an audience, just vanishes. No one ever sees her again, and people just kind of accept that. Somehow. Not to mention, Julian disappeared in Michaela's lore shortly after weird shit started happening to her. It seems that, canonically, he was the first of the Greenville trio to be taken into the entity's realm. Who knows what he could be up to right now? Weeks later, Sable goes to the town's only theater and goes through
the scary door
that leads directly into entity fog. Got a sidebar for a second here, actually. When Sable finds the portal to the entity's realm, so to speak, her lore describes it thusly. She pushed and shoved the door open to reveal an endless circular stairway descending into perfect darkness. Using a pen light to navigate, she descended for 10 minutes before she noticed the cold, black fog rising from the lower depths. So you're telling me, and I know this is being pedantic, that not a single janitor, or a safety or code inspector, or some other random employee made note of this spooky-ass door? I guess everyone in Greenville just accepts it at this point. I digress. On top of all the random disappearances, there are plenty of other potential threats lurking in Greenville. In Sable's lore, someone who calls into her podcast references a cult, and given how closely Greenville is linked to the entity, this is most likely referring to the Black Veil or Black Talon, whatever they're calling themselves. Outside of anything supernatural, there's also Project Apple Pie, where people were subject to mind control experiments, which ended up, at least partially, being conducted in Greenville's movie theater. Not to mention that Murder Mill, or at least a portion of it, is played at the theater, and there's a whole can of worms behind that tied to the casting of Frank Stone game, and upcoming chapter. But, of course, there are more specific things that haunt Greenville and its residents. Now, I know there's one particular fella that you're really interested in hearing about, but I gotta do a bit of a run back first. I went over the broad strokes of the Unknown story, but I'm gonna summarize briefly. So when Olivia, the POV character from Unknown's lore, describes what the Unknown could be, a few key details emerge. Firstly, the Unknown didn't necessarily originate in Greenville, even though that's where it ultimately sort of made its home. One line reads, "She taped up articles and various theories on similar disappearances attributed to the Unknown throughout the country." So the Unknown has been all over the place, but it seems to just really like Greenville, as if that place didn't suck enough. Based on lore entries, trailers, teasers, and cosmetic outfits, the Unknown has for sure been responsible for the deaths of Ashley and the POV character from the Diner Story teaser, Lisa from the teaser of back and forth text messages, Sean from the Movie Crew group chat teaser, Tent Guy from the first formal official chapter teaser, a Greenville High School cheerleader and quarterback, maybe two if you count alternate outfit colors, and a zookeeper from Greenville Zoo. There's also potentially others based on perk and add-on descriptions, but none of these really mention any specific location. But the Unknown isn't the only scary thing to come out of the All Things Wicked chapter. Now stick with me here, this is a bit of a doozy, but when I first read Sable's lore, I didn't think too much of it. Just a case of, yeah, this is like the type of writing you'd see in any corny fanfiction or creepypasta. But I should have made mention of some other stuff. She may genuinely be the scariest survivor in the game. First, Michaela's lore. Tons of mentions of her roommate and best friend Julian, who we later see for the first time in Tome 24. Literally zero mentions of Sable. Jumping to Sable's lore, she speaks of Michaela as her best friend to an almost infatuated degree. Obviously, there are plenty of cosmetics, profile banners, and blurbs here and there showing the two together, but this still just feels off to me. Beyond this, I want to highlight a bit from the tome lore that made me pause, and I'm just going to read this verbatim. Where did she even come from? It started as Julian and Michaela, then somehow, as if from nowhere, Sable appeared and inserted herself. Now the goth girl's always in the spotlight, and then, "It's been me and Michaela since we were kids. You were never a part of this. You inserted yourself into our story." Tinfoil hat on for a second, like, holy shit. It's probably just sort of a way to bridge the survivor's lore, and this is worded from Julian's point of view in which he's very frustrated, but this is Greenville we're talking about. I'm not letting anything slide. More on Sable herself. In her own lore entry, she's also gotten a tattoo of an entity symbol from across other lore entries, convinced Michaela to tell the story where she ultimately disappeared, impersonated a relative to talk to Ellen, the sister of the two brothers who disappeared in the theater, while she was institutionalized, gleefully entered the entity's realm to be eternally tortured and killed, and worst of all, she has a podcast. Now, I'm not saying that she's the entity itself or anything major like that, but there's a non-zero chance that
that motherfucker back there is not real!
And yeah, as of writing this script, Tome 24 does have Sable and Julian start to get along even just a little bit by the end, but I don't know, I'm not letting her off the hook that easily. The thing about Greenville is that it's so disgustingly horrible that the horrors aren't even limited to just original chapters. Because you don't just have the Unknown, but also... You know, I never talked about how Behavior integrated Ghostface into the lore, making up their own shit since licensing was so vague. They only got the Ghostface mask, none of the stuff from the Scream movies, so they just kinda cooked with the lore. I really like that. And you know what I especially like? I'm a huge fan of the Friday the 13th movies. I consider them to be the absolute top of the mountain when it comes to the slasher genre. You know what I don't like? All of the legal drama that kept Jason in adaptation limbo for the longest time. It's such a big mess that I'm genuinely not equipped to go over it all with you here. Thankfully, it came to a conclusion with a bit of a caveat. Because all of the rights are such a labyrinth to navigate, the compromise was the Jason Universe Initiative, where the character of Jason can be licensed out to stuff like Call of Duty, Fortnite, and for some reason, Angry Orchard. He couldn't be licensed out as a Friday the 13th chapter, as the title is also one of the things split up by legal rights, and don't you just love how annoying and complicated this all is? So technically, the Jason we see in Dead by Daylight is, in fact, Jason Voorhees from the Friday the 13th movies, with genuine film references sprinkled across his add-ons that confirm this. But for legal reasons, you can't say any of that. You just gotta give the audience a big cartoon wink, because while you can't officially state it, we all know who this is. But with all of that bullshit in mind, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, because since they can't reference Pamela Voorhees or any of his movie exploits in the killer lore blurb section, they can do what they did for Ghostface. They can make shit up. And it actually kicks so much ass. Jason rolls up into Greenville coming across a tent in the woods, intending to, I must assume, add the camper inside to his kill count. He opens the tent only to find our favorite weird little critter, the Unknown. In the 13-hour Shed by Daylight stream, we first see it around this timestamp where it peeks out from behind a tree and then scampers off into the woods. And at around the 11-hour and 10 minutes mark, we hear the Unknown eviscerating Tent Guy, same audio from its original teaser. Based on the stream, if we're to take it literally and as canon, Jason stands there for over 10 hours and, after spotting the Unknown, waits another couple of hours before actually going to investigate. The patience this man has, I will never understand. This connection actually tells us something else that might be interesting. The Friday the 13th movies, whether behaviors allowed to reference them or not, take place in New Jersey. Except for that one, and that one, and parts of this one. Going back to where we put a pin in Greenville's location, Massachusetts is quite the trek away from New Jersey. This isn't to say that Jason is averse to traveling to other places like Ormond, Canada, or Port Henley, a yet-to-be-introduced location, or Springwood, Ohio for his showdown with Freddy Krueger. But even still, with Greenville being somewhere in Massachusetts, whether Crystal Lake or some variation of it exists in the Dead by Daylight universe or not, Jason had to go out of his way to roll up to Greenville, as if they didn't have enough shit going on. As for the rest of Jason's Dead by Daylight lore, the rest of the passage is basically just several paragraphs of the two killers beating the shit out of each other until the entity eventually takes Jason, including a bit where Jason cuts off the Unknown's head and it continues to attack him. One commenter tied this back to the drawing from the string of teasers leading up to All Things Wicked, and while I love this idea, it's so unlikely that this was planned, and it's more than likely just a fun coincidence. All Things Wicked launched in March 2024, and Jason Universe wasn't officially a thing until May 2024. Still, it's such a fun interpretation I had to mention it. It's funny, even though time is irrelevant in the entity's realm, Jason, as far as the out-of-realm timeline is concerned, was taken before the Unknown. Jason was always the license that Dead by Daylight needed. I mean, the guy inspired the Trapper, he's quite literally the blueprint. It's honestly still so surreal that he's finally here, and all the more fitting that he's the 10th anniversary killer. Sure, it's not great that the license came with caveats and restrictions to work around, but hey, I'm just grateful that it's not another Remake Freddy situation, because that license is so bad that I sometimes forget that horror legend Freddy Krueger is even in the game. That's insane to me. Visually speaking, too, I was really on the fence at first. The Jason Universe design, designed by Greg Nicotero, who also designed Part 9 Jason, really didn't land for me. I actually think I hate it. The outfit is bland and it's kinda whatever, but the mask itself looks, in my opinion, like...
What the fuck is this piece of shit?
The squared, almost cartoon angry eyes, eye holes look goofy as hell. And the way that the mask looks like an anime head in the profile view, it doesn't spark joy. That being said, I have to give major props to Dead by Daylight's art team because, as usual, they managed to make it look actually kinda good. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm still not in love with the Jason Universe design, but the way he looks in-game and in the promotional art, it's actually grown on me a bit. I don't mind it here. And as for his cosmetics, well, two of them look good. The ones that sort of try and composite elements from Friday the 13th's Part 2 and 3 are really not doing it for me, but their sort of homage skins to Part 6 and 7 look quite good. I especially like combining the Death Forsaken outfit with the default machete. I also quite like how the mask chevrons are green on that skin. It's a fun original design for Jason. I do hope we can get skins that actually come from the movies at some point, if that's even possible. Fuck it, give us a Jason X skin, that'd be hilarious. I've seen it discussed, and it's definitely fun to joke about, but no, the Freddy Fazbear's Pizza and Fallen Refuge maps aren't part of Greenville. Dead by Daylight has a realm system that determines which maps go where, and Greenville Square and the aforementioned maps fall into the Withered Isle realm, which has somewhat controversially become the fuck it realm, where any map can go, or if they just need to reuse the tile set. To be fair, Fallen Refuge wasn't even gonna be a map by the sounds of it. It was supposed to just be a single tile that spawns in if someone's playing Rick or Michonne, but this was made into a map instead. It's not a very good one. But as fun as it is to imagine Greenville being even more screwed by having a Freddy Fazbear's Pizza location, it's just part of the Withered Isle realm in the same way that the Temple of Purgation, belonging to the Plague, is set in the Red Forest instead of ancient Babylon. Dredge and the Garden of Joy also aren't set in Greenville either, but instead on a private island somewhere in the Atlantic. Potentially nearby, sure, but too vague to say. Let's not kid ourselves, Julian is 100% gonna show up as a survivor someday, right? And there's also no way that they let Greenville go entirely to focus on other stuff. It's become far too iconic as the sort of archetypical horror story small town to simply let it rest. And honestly, I'm all for that. I hope that if Julian shows up, he gets a killer to go with him. That'd be fun. I've said it before, and I'll continue to do so until the heat death of the universe. I love when Dead by Daylight expands its own original world and setting. Hell, let's get more killers and survivors eventually too. Maybe not all one after another, but just every now and again we check in on this hellhole to see what's up. I'd especially love to see a survivor and killer duo that have nothing to do with the Greenville trio and the unknown. Like, since all of the survivors from there so far are goths or witchy or some other alternative subculture, I'd like a chapter where it's just like, new killer, the Goat Man, new survivor, fucking Mitch from Accounts Receivable. Hit me up, behavior. I got a million of these. I really hope you liked this video. It was a lot of fun to revisit this setting, and all it took was the Unknown and Jason clobbering each other to reinvigorate the discussion. If they add more stuff to expand this lore even further, well, I guess we'll have to wait and see. In the meantime, be sure to subscribe if you want, drop a like or comment, and I'll see you next time.